Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and Jon O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
Where does the Dagda's power come from? Well, Dagda Agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And that is the Ceist or question that I explored quite a while ago when I was beginning to explore my relationship with the Dagda, the good god of Ireland's pantheon of Tuatha Dé Danann. Now, it's easily answered in some ways, but it's not so easily answered in others. So I guess the answer, not hard to say. Mostly, the Dagda's power comes from knowledge. But there are a couple of other things that are linked or associated with the Dagda, pretty much his tools, which we need to have a look at and to explore. So when we're talking about the Dagda, I suppose we need to kind of look at look first at where he comes from, because we have a location. In the ancient mythological cycles of Ireland, we know that during the time of the Numidians in Ireland, they were under the oppression of Fomorians. And so various sons of Nemed went to Fintan, this lone survivor of previous peoples who had been here, and they asked him, "What do we do?" And he's like, "Listen, lads, you better get out. Take your people and go out of Ireland." And so that's what the sons of Nemed did. And the varying descendants of the sons of Nemed who had gone out of Ireland returned to Ireland. Their descendants came back. And that was the Firbolg and then later on the Tuatha Dé Danann. Now, it's said that the Tuatha Dé Danann are descended from the wives of Beothuk and his people. So there's a guy called Beothuk who was son of Irenbail, the soothsayer, son of Nemed. So Nemed is the, I don't know, grandsire here, and then his son Irenbail, the soothsayer, his son again Beothuk. Beothuk actually dies of a plague in Ireland, but his wives and and their people go out of Ireland and are said to go into the north and west of the world, and there on islands out in the north and the west, they found four great cities, and from which, when the Tuatha Dé Danann return to Ireland, they bring four great treasures. Now, one of those treasures is very strongly linked with the Dagda because it bears the same name. So from one of the great cities, a place called Murius, known as well as the Fortress of Pinnacles, the treasure known as the cauldron of the Dagda is brought back. Now, this does make it an interesting question about the Dagda. Is the Dagda because of his name or his identity, or is he the Dagda because he's the holder of the cauldron of the Dagda, which comes from Murius? Or is the Dagda even a name? Is it actually an epithet or a title that has been given to the Dagda, or given to he who goes by many other names, Uchud, being very commonly Ola Harp, and then he has the Rosk poem, which goes into detail about descriptors and details of kind of the deep knowledge of who he is. But the Dagda is what he's known by. But the cauldron is brought from Murius, and of the cauldron it says no company would go from it unsatisfied. That is it. Now, there are many other cauldrons. There's other cauldrons in other mythology, which talk about bringing people back from the dead and all that kind of stuff. That is not this cauldron. This cauldron is no company goes from it unsatisfied. And that's what we have. That's the information we have about it. Now, I've explored the cauldron and its association with the Dagda through the lens of his position as a hearth and home deity. As much as he is a god of Druidry, as much as he is a warrior god, as much as he is a god of poetry, performance, and music, he's also the god of hearth and home. He is the god who makes sure company, when it comes, doesn't leave his hearth unsatisfied. And so that is the tool, or the tool of hospitality, really, that is associated with that, which is the cauldron. But that's not the only aspect of it. I touched on God of Druidry there. And the God of Druidry is actually a naming that is given on him by Nuada. And this is where the Dagda's power, when we explore Dagda's power, in the meeting of the men of the goddess, which is a conversation held for over a year with Nuada, Gwivnu, Dean Cecht, Oma, and I think a couple of other folk as well. There's an arrangement or an agreement as to what each is going to bring to the battle of the forthcoming invasion again of the Fomorians, since Bress has been deposed as king. So there's a lot of mythology here in the back, and I would love to just sit and talk to you about the entire thing. I do on a regular basis, but essentially there is this meeting, and they all make their promises as to what they're going to bring to the battle. There's a follow-on meeting, similarly, where Lugh gathers pretty much all of the notables of the Tuatha Dé Danann, and he puts them to the same question: what are they going to bring to it? And this is where the Dagda is referred to as the Dagda. Now, in the first meeting, there's a lot of promises made. There's sorcerers there. There's druids there. They're like, okay, we're going to hide the rivers and lakes of Ireland so that the invaders can't have a drink. They die of thirst. We're going to call upon the names of all the mountains so that they cast their rocks against the invaders. There's also the sorcerers, I believe, are going to rain fire from the sky. The druids are going to use their knowledge to cause sicknesses really to come upon the invaders. But every breath that the Tuatha Dé Danann would take would increase their valor and their vigor for fighting, even if the battle were to last unto 7 years. So there's a lot of big promises and a lot of big power that's being promised here. And into that moment steps the Dagda and goes, everything you have promised, I will take on myself and do. And this, as much as it's a small line in a very large text, in the context of who the Dagda is and who else is there at these meetings, because he doesn't just do it once, he does it with Nuada and he does it again with Lugh. He says whatever anyone else's promises, he's going to get that done. And in the first instance, Nuada turns to him and goes, yes, that's because you are the Dagda, the good hand, the goodly one, because he's good at everything. And no one says, is that too much work for you? Or like, maybe you can't do this, maybe you can't. No one disagrees. Everyone is like, yep, if Dagda says it's done, it's as good as done. And so when the battle comes, everything that was promised, it does happen. On the invasion, everything that is arranged does happen. And so it's referred to as him being their goodly god, their good god of Druidry. And this is about his knowledge, his ability in all other matters. So that's not the extent of his power, though, because a lot of that power then comes from his own knowledge and his own ability. As I said, there are other implements that are involved with the Dagda and his ability to do amazing things. After the second battle of Moytura, the Dagda's own home is raided, and he, finding that out, takes Oma and Lugh and goes to recover his own possessions, one of which is referred to as his harp. And the harp is known as Dor Da Blah, the Oak of Two Meadows. And with it, it is said that the Dagda would turn the seasons. So by him playing the music on this harp, the seasons themselves will be set in their right order and they would flow and follow as they should. So the harp itself, though, is bound. The music is bound within the harp so that none other than the Dagda's hand can bring forth the music. So in the story about the Dagda's harp, we find that it's been stolen. He comes with with Lugh and with Oma to try and get it back. And he goes into a hall surrounded by all of these Fomorian invaders, including none other than Bress, who is there. And everyone is like, well, kill him. He's on his own. There's not many of them. But the Dagda then calls forth the harp where it had been hung on the wall because no one could get any sound out of it. And the harp leapt to his hand and struck down 9 people on the way. He then plays music on the harp, but the music he plays is notable because it is the 3 strains of emotion, the 3 strains of music by which a harper is known. So he plays the Gyantre, the joyful strain, the Goldtre, the wailing and mourning strain, and then the Soontre, the sleeping strain. And so in this, he moves the entire invading war host through joy and revel and dancing, and then through mourning and grieving and weeping, and then through sleep and rest. And so with this music, this one guy playing the harp puts everyone in the entire hall to sleep. Interestingly, he doesn't just overpower everyone while they sleeps, he just leaves them. He takes his stuff and goes, despite the fact that they're the enemy and the invading horde. So it gives insights into how not just his power, but how he uses his power, how he chooses to use his power. The last and very important tool, which is very notably associated with the Dagda, is of course the club by which life and death is dictated and controlled. And this story is very interesting because for all of the powers that the Dagda has, this is a power he doesn't. And so when his son Kermit is slain by Lugh, he can stop the corruption of the body. He can stop it, like, decaying. He binds and wraps the body of his adult child, puts it up on his shoulders, and carries it out of Ireland on a quest to seek the power that he does not have, which is the power over life and death. So he eventually finds this power that within the club. The club is said to have a gentle end, which would restore life, and a rough end, which would take it. He beguiles people into giving him the club, the three brothers, and he uses it against them and then to kill them. And he then brings his child back to life. But then Kermit is, why should I have life if it's been taken from them? And then he brings the three brothers back to life with the club. And this is where we get another insight into the Dagda's power, because he asks them for a loan of a club, that they would give him a club for the time being. At which point they're like, well, what guarantee do we have that the club will come back to us when you're done with it? At which point the Dagda refers to his own power. And very interestingly, he says, I offer as guarantee my authority over sun, moon, land, and sea. And so it's not just a case of, oh yeah, here's a promise over, oh yeah, he literally has the authority to influence those elemental forces. And by him giving this guarantee, if he goes against that guarantee, what is sacrificed is everything he has put up in ante, everything he's put up against the oath. And so if he breaks the oath, he loses that authority, he loses that ability. And so the Dagda's power, yes, he takes up the power over life and death in that instance, but it also gives an insight into he has the authority over everything else. And we see later on him use the authority over the sun by ensuring that 9 months passes an entire day when the Dagda has his tryst, his relationship with the goddess Boan. And so they have their relationship, and she conceives and bears a child, Angus, known as the young son, Angus MacCock, and Angus is conceived and born all in one 9-month day because the Dagda stops the motion of the sun. So where does the Dagda power come from? It comes from many places. He has all of these different tools that he uses in various ways to facilitate his abilities, but time and again, it does come back to his own knowledge, his own ability, and his own authority. So when we talk and think about the Dagda as a god, it's not just here's this one god of lightning or thunder, here's this one god of war, or this one god of one job. He's literally referred to as the good god because he's good at everything. He is a deity that you can turn to and talk to about any aspect of your life. He will have insight and ability to support you with that. And that is something I do on a very regular basis. Everything from physical tasks around the home to support my family, to intellectual and mental tasks around, like, supporting my community around the world with education, and then also the internal work, the emotional intelligence that I need to kind of work on for myself to be a better person. With the strains of music, I look to the Dagda to help me with that as well. So, and of course, him being the All-Ahar, the Big Daddy, the great and ample father, inspiring me to be a better great and ample father. So there's a lot to think about and to talk about when we explore the Dagda's power. So it's not just about his own abilities. There are tools that are associated with his abilities, but knowing more about the tools and knowing the stories where we find him taking up those powers and using those powers gives us a much deeper insight into the abilities and the mindset and capacities of this very good god. So I teach a class over at I teach many classes on the Dagda at the Irish Pagan School, but there is one called the Dagda's Tools, which I will link below if you want to know more specifically about the cauldron, about the harp, about the club. There's also a mention of a Dagda's axe, which I don't mention here, but if you want to know more about that, you should check out the class. Until next time, look after yourself, take care, agus slán. Goodbye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.